The sharp sting of Sarah's palm against my cheek echoed through the law office. My head snapped to the side, as several gasps filled the room. The lawyer, Mr. Thompson, stood frozen behind his mahogany desk, my father's will still in his hands. "This is impossible," Sarah screamed, her perfectly manicured fingers trembling. "I was his wife for 8 years. 8 years, this little brat barely spoke to him." I touched my burning cheek, fighting back tears. At 25, I shouldn't let my stepmother's outburst affect me this way, but the pain of losing Dad just 2 weeks ago was still raw. "Mrs. Bennet," Mr. Thompson said firmly, "please control yourself, or I'll have to ask you to leave." Sarah's green eyes blazed with fury. "Leave? I'm not going anywhere until this is fixed. David promised me everything. Everything." I looked around the room at the scattered family members. My Aunt Claire, Uncle Robert, and my cousin Emma. Their faces showed varying degrees of shock and discomfort. None of them had expected this dramatic turn of events. "The will is quite clear," Mr. Thompson continued, adjusting his glasses. "The Bennet estate, including the main house, the summer cottage, and all business holdings, passes to Miss Catherine Bennet, with a modest monthly allowance set aside for Mrs. Sarah Bennet." Modest? Sarah spat the word like poison. $5,000 a month is what you call modest. I deserve millions. I took care of him. I almost laughed at that. Sarah's version of taking care had involved spending Dad's money on luxury shopping sprees while he fought cancer alone. Where was she during his chemotherapy sessions? I was the one who drove him to every appointment, held his hand through the worst days, and managed his business when he became too weak. "The will is legally binding," Mr. Thompson stated. Mr. Bennet's intentions were clearly documented and witnessed. Sarah turned to me, her designer heels clicking on the hardwood floor. "What did you do? How did you manipulate him while he was sick?" "I didn't manipulate anyone," I said quietly, standing my ground. "Maybe Dad just saw through you finally." That's when she slapped me again, harder this time. "Sarah," Aunt Claire shouted, rushing to my side. "That's enough." But Sarah wasn't finished. She grabbed my father's gold watch from the desk, the one he'd left specifically to me, and hurled it across the room. "You think you've won? I'll contest this will. I'll tell everyone how you poisoned him against me." Mr. Thompson pressed a button on his desk, and security appeared at the door. As they escorted Sarah out, her threats echoed down the hallway. Once she was gone, Mr. Thompson cleared his throat. "Miss Bennet, there's something else your father wanted you to see." He turned his laptop around, clicking on a video file. My father's face filled the screen, recorded sometime during his final months. Despite his illness, his eyes were clear and determined. "Katie," his voice was weak but steady, "if you're watching this, then Sarah has reacted exactly as I expected to the will reading. That's why I installed security cameras in the office 3 months ago." My heart stopped. I looked up at the discreet black dome in the corner of the ceiling. "Your stepmother," Dad continued, "has been planning to contest my will since my diagnosis. What she doesn't know is that I've been recording everything. The cameras caught her meeting with other men while I was in the hospital. They recorded her searching my office for bank statements and talking to her lawyer about having me declared mentally incompetent." Tears rolled down my cheeks as I watched my father's final message. "But most importantly," he said, "they recorded her confession about her first husband." The room went silent. Sarah had always claimed her first husband died in a car accident. "Check the folder marked insurance claims in my personal safe," Dad instructed. "You'll find everything you need there." "I'm so sorry I didn't see her true nature sooner, sweetheart, but I'm making it right now." The video ended, leaving us all stunned. Mr. Thompson pulled out a thick file. "Your father provided copies of everything. The police are very interested in reinvestigating the death of Sarah's first husband." I sat there processing it all. Dad hadn't just protected his estate, he'd exposed a potential murderer. "There's more," Mr. Thompson added. "The security footage from today will help establish Sarah's violent tendencies if she tries to contest the will." As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a text from our head of security. "Got everything on camera, multiple angles. She never saw the new systems your dad installed." For the first time since the will reading began, I smiled. Even in death, Dad was still protecting me, still one step ahead of Sarah's schemes. The security footage wouldn't just save the estate, it would reveal Sarah's true nature to the world. But this was just the beginning of what the cameras had captured, and Sarah had no idea what was coming next. The next morning, Sarah's face was splashed across every local news channel. The security footage of her assault at the will reading had somehow leaked online. The headlines were brutal. Grieving widow attacks stepdaughter over inheritance and millionaire's wife shows true colors after will reading. But it wasn't just the slap that caught people's attention. Eagle-eyed viewers noticed something in the footage. The moment when Sarah had frantically tried to grab papers from Mr. Thompson's desk. A small key had fallen from her sleeve. A key that looked exactly like the one missing from my father's private safe deposit box at Brighton Bank. Detective Laura Martinez sat across from me in our family home study, reviewing the footage. Your father was thorough, she said, pausing the video on Sarah's face. The cameras caught everything, including her late-night visits to his office while he was hospitalized. I watched as she played another clip, this one from 3 months ago. Sarah, thinking she was alone, rifling through Dad's files at 2 a.m., making calls in whispered tones. Once he's declared incompetent, everything passes to me. No, the daughter won't be a problem. We've reopened the investigation into Gregory Wells' death, Detective Martinez continued, referring to Sarah's first husband. The insurance payout was substantial, and there were irregularities in the accident report that were never followed up. My phone buzzed continuously with messages from family friends and business associates. Everyone had seen the footage, and everyone had a story about Sarah. Suspicious conversations, missing documents, unexplained meetings. Your father's medical record showed trace amounts of an unusual substance, the detective added. Nothing lethal but enough to accelerate his decline. We're testing Sarah's home office for residue. My hands shook as I processed this information. Had she been slowly poisoning him? A loud banging at the front door interrupted us. Sarah's voice carried through the house. Catherine, open this door right now. Detective Martinez moved quickly, signaling to officers waiting outside. Within moments Sarah was brought into the study, handcuffed and still screaming. You think you're clever with your cameras? She snarled at me. I still have friends in high places. I'll destroy you and everything your father built. Mrs. Bennett, Detective Martinez intervened. I'd advise you to remain silent. We have a warrant to search your residence and your private office at the country club. Sarah's face went pale. You can't, that's private property. The warrant covers all locations where you might have stored documents or substances related to both David Bennett's and Gregory Wells' deaths. I watched as Sarah's carefully constructed facade crumbled. Her designer outfit couldn't hide her trembling hands. Her perfect makeup couldn't conceal her panic. Those files were supposed to be destroyed, she whispered, seemingly forgetting we could hear her. Detective Martinez raised an eyebrow. Which files would those be, Mrs. Bennett? But Sarah had caught herself. She straightened up, demanding her lawyer. As the police led her away, Mr. Thompson arrived with another bombshell. We found her prenuptial agreement, he said, holding up a document. The original one, not the altered version she's been showing everyone. She doesn't have any claim to the estate, even as a widow. The prenup had been in Dad's secret safe all along with evidence of Sarah's attempts to forge a new version. The security cameras had caught her multiple failed attempts to crack the safe's combination. There's something else, Mr. Thompson added hesitantly. Your father recorded their conversations in the hospital. On the day before he died, Sarah admitted to certain actions regarding her first husband. The recording would later become key evidence in both cases. Dad's suspicious decline, and the reopened investigation into Gregory Wells' death. By evening, Sarah's arrest was breaking news. Former associates of her first husband came forward with previously undisclosed information. The insurance investigator who'd closed Gregory's case quickly admitted to receiving bribes. I sat in Dad's study, surrounded by the evidence he'd methodically gathered during his final months. He'd known he was dying, not just from cancer, but from whatever Sarah had been giving him. Instead of confronting her, he'd built an airtight case. Your father was a brilliant man, Detective Martinez said as she prepared to leave. He knew she'd show her true colors at the will reading. The cameras were his final trap. Looking at his empty chair, I could almost see Dad sitting there, planning it all out. He'd sacrificed his last months to ensure justice would be served, not just for himself, but for Gregory Wells too. The security footage hadn't just saved the estate, it had exposed a black widow in designer clothing. And somewhere I hoped Dad was watching, knowing his final plan had worked perfectly. 6 months after the infamous will reading, I sat in the courtroom as the jury foreman stood to deliver their verdict. Sarah, dressed in a modest gray suit instead of her usual designer clothes, stared straight ahead. On the count of first-degree murder of Gregory Wells, we find the defendant guilty. Sarah's shoulders slumped slightly. On the count of attempted murder and fraud against David Bennett, we find the defendant guilty. A collective exhale filled the courtroom. Two families had finally gotten justice, mine and Gregory Wells' surviving relatives, who sat in the row behind me. Gregory's sister Susan squeezed my hand. Over the past months, our families had grown close, united by Sarah's betrayal and our shared pursuit of truth. Your father was a hero, she whispered. He solved the mystery we couldn't prove for 8 years. The evidence had been overwhelming. Dad's meticulous documentation, combined with the security footage, had revealed Sarah's pattern of marrying wealthy men, slowly poisoning them, and inheriting their fortunes. But Dad had been different. He'd caught on and turned the tables. As Sarah was led away in handcuffs, she turned to glare at me one last time. He never loved you more than me, she spat. I was everything to him. I smiled calmly. That's why you didn't notice the cameras, Sarah. You were too busy loving yourself. Outside the courthouse, reporters crowded around us. The case had captured national attention, spawning documentaries and true crime specials. But I had one more surprise for them. Today I'm announcing the creation of the David Bennett Foundation for Fraud Prevention, I declared. We'll help families investigate suspicious deaths and train law enforcement to recognize patterns of financial exploitation. The foundation would be housed in Dad's former office building, where those first revealing security cameras had been installed. Gregory's family had joined the board of directors, turning their tragedy into purpose. Mr. Thompson helped me establish a special legal fund within the foundation, dedicated to helping potential victims gather evidence. Your father would be proud, he said. He turned his own tragedy into a way to protect others. The security footage that exposed Sarah became a training tool for police departments nationwide. Dad's methodical evidence gathering set a new standard for documenting suspicious behavior. 1 year after the will reading, I stood in Dad's study, now restored to exactly how he'd kept it. The hidden cameras were still there, not recording anymore, but preserved as a reminder of his brilliance. On his desk sat 2 framed photos, one of him and Mom from happier days, and a recent one of me at the foundation's opening. Between them lay his gold watch, the one Sarah had thrown across the lawyer's office, now restored and ticking steadily. The cameras showed everything, Dad, I whispered, touching the watch. Just like you planned. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Sarah's appeals had been denied. She would serve 2 life sentences consecutively. The insurance money from both marriages would be returned to the respective families. Gregory's sister had asked me earlier why I thought Dad had gone to such lengths instead of just divorcing Sarah. The answer was simple. He knew she would never stop, that another wealthy man would become her next target. Even dying, he'd thought of others' protection. Looking out the study window at the foundation's new sign, I smiled. Trust but verify, Dad's favorite saying, had become our motto. The security cameras that caught Sarah's true nature now symbolized hope for other families. The footage hadn't just exposed one black widow, it had created a legacy of protection and justice. And somewhere I knew Dad was watching, proud that his final plan had saved not just his daughter, but countless future victims. In the end, Sarah's slap at the will reading hadn't just exposed her rage, it had triggered an avalanche of justice that would echo for years to come. The end.